Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Itchy Mysteries. I'm your host, John Lorden, for this episode on, can you believe it's June already? June 1st, 2017. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. Since I've started doing this YouTube channel, at least in this way, I've noticed occasionally I will get pulled into kind of trends where several episodes within a week will talk about the same type of topic. It usually happens very organically and naturally. It's not like I planned that, but we're kind of in another situation where that has happened this week. Hopefully you have checked out Johnny Vlogs from this week, where we've talked about trafficking and the amazing work done by Destiny Rescue. If you haven't checked it out, I highly recommend you give it a shot. I know it's a tough topic, but I think we talk about it in a way that is relatively easy to digest, which I was worried about when we were kind of planning that episode. And we have a great host named Corey Nichols from Destiny Rescue to tell us about his personal experiences. Today, when I was looking for a movie to review for you guys, I bumped into a film called I Am Jane Doe. Now, when I originally looked at that title, I assumed it was about kind of the Jane Does that I experience most in my work, which would probably be someone that has deceased and they don't know their identity. Once I read what it was about, I knew that it was the movie I had to cover for you this week. It is about trafficking in the U.S., but it kind of focuses more on a legal battle between several children that have been rescued from trafficking, and their families are looking how to try to combat it and make sure that other people don't fall into the same thing. And they take up issue with Backpage, which, quite honestly, I learned a bit about Backpage. I've only bumped into information about Backpage when I was researching missing people who would usually be working in prostitution. Backpage is mentioned quite frequently in those circles. I kind of thought that's what it specialized in. I didn't know that Backpage was also kind of like a Craigslist where you could just, sell your sofa or sell your TV or something like that. So this documentary does a really good job, first of all, of educating you about, Backpage, where it came from, the parent companies that have kind of owned it and traded it off, and people that have kind of followed along with the insane amount of money that is being generated by Backpage, and the legal battle of these trafficking survivors that are now trying to help others not fall into that same thing. Let me read a little bit of the description from IMDb for you. About the courageous girls who brought the Jane Doe versus Backpage.com case to court. The film raises awareness about how young girls are trafficked in this country and the injustices for victims that exist in our justice and legislative systems. And it really does. A good portion of this film has a lot of legal concepts that are being discussed, but I think they did a really good job. I believe the director's name is Mary Mazzio. They did a really good job boiling those things down to very easy to understand concepts. They also did a great job making a lot of these attorneys very likable, which sometimes in a lot of the stuff I watch, you're kind of going, oh, I really don't like that attorney. But these guys, they're almost kind of heroes in my eyes when you see what they're going up against and how they keep trying to combat this issue, despite losing time and time again, thanks to a law that was put into place which basically protects website owners from content that is posted by a third party, which for me, I was struggling with while I was watching the whole thing, because I was like, it's one thing if someone comes to YouTube and they make a post on a video and that post is illegal in some fashion. So this law would basically protect YouTube from being sued because they didn't put that post there. And obviously, do they have the resources to really keep track of every single post that's on every single video? We know YouTube struggles just with managing every video, let alone every post on every video. So I understand why that law is in place. But for me, I was struggling with the concept because once you get into financial transactions, that's a little bit different. That's not just a post that is being generated, essentially for free by some third party. You're now talking about placing an ad for them where they are looking to make money, and you are getting paid for helping them make that money. So luckily the film does kind of steer towards that, or more accurately, I should say, the legal attacks that they're choosing against Backpage steer more towards that towards the end of the film. But it is also just a little bit infuriating, just, living in this world of social media and hearing about these judges and their decisions and how little they seem to understand about social media, about the internet, about what technology is out there. Even the way Backpage goes about trying to help themselves, like they start hiring moderators for these ads and stuff like that. It's like people don't understand that you could simply have a query, especially the way that Backpage was talking about their moderation. Like they had people reviewing the ads and they gave them a list of words that they're looking for. You could automate that process to pull all the ads that had those specific terms and run that report in about a minute. Okay, maybe a couple minutes if we're talking about, terabytes and terabytes of data. But it's I swear to God, it's like they were trying to put a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. It's not how you go really trying to attack that problem accurately. And there's some very interesting stuff with Backpage and their maneuvering, them trying to align with NCMEC. I was really stoked to see that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was featured heavily in this documentary. There's even little kind of cameos from John Walsh. But it was just insane seeing how Backpage was trying to say, oh, well, we actually work with NCMEC and we've been kicking cases over to them. And then you see representatives at NCMEC saying, we think that they're just doing that because they want to clean up their image. Really, really crazy stuff going on here. But I have to, my hat's off to the director here. I mean, she takes a topic that is very easy to make people uncomfortable and discusses it in a way where it's easy to digest that. It's easy to get people confused with a lot of the legal maneuvering that's going on. She once again boils it down, makes it extremely easy for people to digest that. And then you get to see this battle as they're going up against a multi-million-dollar company. And, you've got a bunch of judges that don't seem to understand technology. It was almost in some weird way like trying to watch a really great boxing match or something. I mean, and the person you're rooting for is just getting knocked down over and over. I mean, there is a struggle that I really felt while watching this film. A couple of points where, quite honestly, I felt pretty emotional about what the people were going through. And outside of all that, you have just such a good cause in terms of these families that are trying to fight child trafficking. Now, where does this movie not work so great? It's not really an open conversation about, is Backpage really responsible? Should they really be held responsible for this or not? The point of view of this film is, yes, they should absolutely be held responsible. And I do believe that there's a little more debate that could be had there. I have personal feelings about it. I don't think it's hard for you guys to imagine. Of course, I was pretty much on the side of this film, but it did occur to me that the opposing points of view were not really being displayed in this film. Would it have added anything to this film in particular? Maybe just a little bit, just to give us kind of a counterbalance to the argument that Backpage was trying to make. They're really just played up as a villain in this film, and in terms of reality, I seldom find that that's the case. I don't think that people generally operate in a manner where they think that they are doing evil or intentionally doing harm to other people. I think a lot, even companies that fall into those positions of doing harm to other people, I think a lot of it is short-sightedness, possibly focusing too much on financial gains as opposed to being a good steward or a good citizen within our country. But there's not a whole lot of opposing view that you're going to get from this film in particular. In terms of how it's all edited and shot, there is some really good photography going on here. I love how they kind of did a little bit of scene recreation where they would run audio that was actually happening in the courtroom, but they would show just kind of slowed down scenes of the people that were part of that conversation going on in the courtroom. The music, there was a few moments where the music kind of grabbed my attention just a little too much, and it was almost like there was these swells in the music that were kind of inspirational, but they're slightly overused to the point where you're almost starting to feel like you're watching a commercial. I know it's kind of a weird explanation, but there's just a few moments where I was like, look, these people are insanely inspirational. You've got these families talking about very hard stuff and these very young women that are stepping up to try to do the right thing. Do I really need all that sweeping emotional music behind it? It grabbed at me just a few times, but super, super minor issue. I think my biggest issue with this film, which I know is going to sound extremely trivial in terms of what we're talking about here, is the title. It did not let me know what this film was about whatsoever. I had to get way into the description before I understood what the film was. I get it because they have a case where they're not using the young girl's name. They make her Jane Doe, and then they say it's versus Backpage.com. Even Jane Doe versus Backpage.com probably would have been a much better title. But I Am Jane Doe, they kind of pay it off with a scene at the end. I don't want to blow it for you guys in case you want to see it, but was that payoff worth a title where your audience isn't going to potentially know what the topic is about? I personally didn't think so. It's probably my biggest knock on the film. Outside of that, I really enjoyed that the material was being handled in such a sensitive and professional way. It was all put together extremely well. I went along for the emotional ride of these court and legislative battles that are going on this issue. And when I came out at the end, I felt like I had learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know before. All those things are what I look for in these types of documentaries, and this one, check, just hit it right down the list. So for me personally, I would rate this an 8 out of 10. It was just extremely well done. I don't know what else to say. I think on IMDb it rates somewhere like a 7.5 or maybe a 7.6 or something like that. I caught it on Netflix here in the US. If you don't have Netflix, you can also rent it on other platforms. And I just recommend you really see it. One last thing, they had updates on this case all the way through January of 2017. I don't think I've ever seen a documentary that was brought up to that current, essentially. And it felt really cool. Like I kind of had this wave of, oh wow, oh my God, they got information from just a couple months ago in this thing. So know that it is very current information. And I highly recommend it. I think if you're a fan of this channel, you're probably going to like it. If legal stuff kind of turns you off, you might not enjoy it quite as much, but I still think there's a lot of humanity and inspiration in this story from basically the families that have rescued their children out of this situation. You know, how this film could have been a little bit better, the opposing viewpoint that I mentioned before, and also potentially talking about other situations where, because it's not only about the kids that are rescued and then, you know, trying to do something to stop this from happening. What about the kids that aren't rescued? What about the kids that meet real tragedy out there that might have happened through an ad where someone picked them out on Backpage.com and they not only never came home, but never got back to their pimp or their trafficker. So I think it could have gone into a little bit of a different direction, but I really appreciate how Mary Mazzio handled this. And once again, if you did see Johnny Vlogs earlier this week where we were talking about international trafficking, this is a great counterpart because this is about here in the US. And the problem here in the US is quite a bit different than the international problems that we were talking to Corey about. Although you'd find also some similarities, particularly with how the traffickers are controlling usually the women, but also the men that they are trafficking. So that's it. Wow. Whew. Feels like that was a rambler. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on today's video. And once again, I hope you'll check it out. I think many of you out there are going to enjoy it, possibly learn something. And my hat's off to Mary Mazzio. Great, great job. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you back here tomorrow on the Lord and Arts channel.